Milling Through History presents Keeping Cool with Coolidge. The presidency of Calvin Coolidge began on August 2nd, 1923, with the sudden death of Warren G. Harding. Coolidge was visiting family in Vermont at the time, and the home he was staying at had neither electricity nor telephone. He would receive word of the president's death by telegram. Once he had learned of this, Coolidge got dressed, went downstairs, and his father, a notary public and justice of the peace, administered the oath of office on August 3rd, 1923, at 2:47 in the morning. For his first act of being President of the United States, Calvin Coolidge made the momentous decision of going back to bed. Upon his return to Washington, Coolidge signaled he would continue with Harding's plans for the presidency. However, he would go ahead and do something that his predecessor had not, namely, directly face off against scandal. Coolidge went forward with investigations planned on the various scandals which had plagued the previous administration. When it came time for the 1924 general election, a few things had changed over the last 4 years. For the Democrats, they became rather excited when Robert La Follette announced that he was splitting from the Republican Party and forming a new progressive party. Calvin Coolidge did become the Republican nominee, and for him, the glory of the presidency did not seem to have all it claimed to be, namely because of the death of his son, young Calvin Coolidge. The boy's death would forever haunt the father. As such, when Coolidge ran for the presidency, it was a far more subdued campaign compared to anything else he had ever done before. However, the results of his even subdued campaign proved beneficial, as it was almost a complete repeat of the 1920 election, with one very notable difference. Robert La Follette had been able to win his home state of Wisconsin, and that was it. With a full term of the presidency now available to him, Calvin Coolidge would discover that this term was a very successful one, namely with the beginning of what was to be referred to in history as the Roaring Twenties. This was a time period when business did not have many regulations put on them to restrain their growth. The Commerce Secretary, Herbert Hoover, promoted business efficiency along with helping to push for the development of airplanes and the radio. Coolidge also believed in lower taxes on the people. It got to a point where the income tax was only being enforced upon the top 2% income earners in the United States. The success of this program allowed for the federal debt to drop by 25%, and there was massive increase in federal revenue, something that had not been seen throughout the entire 20th century. Calvin Coolidge was also a champion of the civil rights movement, seeking to make lynching a federal crime and also overseeing the passage of the Indian Citizenship Act, which officially made all Native American citizens of the United States. Coolidge was also responsible for helping with the relief of German reparations upon Germany with the passage of the Dawes Act. In addition to this, Coolidge was also part of the Kellogg-Briand Pact, which effectively set in motion the process of international law which has been upheld since World War II. The primary goal of this pact was to outlaw war, but while that failed, its subsequent ideas did succeed. Interestingly enough, Calvin Coolidge was also the only president to have his likeness minted onto a coin, notably the 150th anniversary half-dollar. In 1928, to the shock of the entire nation, Calvin Coolidge announced he was not going to run for a second full term, citing that if he did do this, and won, he would be leaving office in March of 1933, having spent 10 years in office. This was a time period that he believed was too much for one man to go ahead and run with. When it came to his successor, Herbert Hoover, Calvin Coolidge remarked, quote, "For 6 years that man has given me unsolicited advice. All of it bad." This is a quote that the nation may have wished to have taken a look at, as future events, when they unfolded, proved he was certainly right. Following the presidency, Coolidge would write a syndicated advice column where you could ask him questions about anything. After that column ended, Calvin Coolidge would suddenly pass away on January 5th, 1933, after suffering from a coronary thrombosis, which is a blood clot in the heart. He was buried in his family home in Vermont. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe for future episodes of Milling Through History, and be sure to leave comments below for future episode ideas. And do not forget to check our suggested reading page.